Chapter 29, A Walking Paradox. 40 minutes and at least that many my mamas later, we reached the hospital. Daydreaming about Tree had been a lifesaver for me, but Aunt Queenie was a bundle of nerves. I declare, she sighed as she helped Joey from the car. I'm so tired of hearing that phrase, it's a miracle I haven't pulled my hair out. Mama, 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 my mama, he said. I might have laughed, except that seeing the hospital, knowing I had to go inside, had filled me with a sudden dread. We rode the elevator to the third floor and walked through a vast, endless hallway, our footsteps clicking against the tile and my pulse pounding in my ears. The smell of medicines and disinfectant, white uniforms everywhere, that nasal voice on the intercom, paging one doctor after another. All were painful reminders that no one had been able to save Punky. Mama, 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 Joey announced to the people we met. Some gawked, some grinned, some said hello, but no one ignored the chubby cowboy in red with the bandaged up face, the raggedy teddy bear, and the one leg shorter than the other. We found Mrs. Markham sleeping on her side with her twisted hands folded beneath her chin. Joey cried, Mama, mama, my mama, and hurled himself against her bed. She yelped at the rude awakening, but she opened her arms when she saw him. Here, son, give me a hug. Yeah. He dropped Bruno at his feet and hugged her hard. I felt a stinging in my throat. Joey would be happy anywhere as long as he had his mama. I stared at Bruno. I was itching to snatch him back to keep that little part of my mother. Mrs. Markham, said Aunt Queenie, how are you? Better now that I can see Joey's okay. Mama, mama, my mama, he said. Mrs. Markham patted his hand. Son, I'm going to be fine. It was just a reaction to some new medicine, and I'll be out of here in a day or two. What's that in your pocket? Joey handed her the carving, then picked Bruno off the floor and danced him across the covers. Where's Peanut? His mother asked. Aunt Queenie told her we'd lost him at the circus and that I was giving up Mom's bear. Mrs. Markham raised her eyebrows at me. Are you sure you want to do that? I'm sure. If Mom was here, she'd give it to him herself. The words made my throat sting worse. I mumbled something about needing a drink and escaped from the room. When I spied a stairway sign, I jogged down 2 flights of stairs and headed for the exit. Outside, sitting on a bench, I watched a robin stretch a worm and I watched the cars go by. Nervously, I toyed with Bruno's eye button in my pocket. It made me think of Mom again, of giving up her bear. I wished I'd stayed at home. If I had, could be carving now and in control. I checked my watch. How long did Aunt Queenie plan to stay? Could I talk her into leaving now? Could we reach the antique shop before it closed? I hurried back to Mrs. Markham's room. No Aunt Queenie, just Mrs. Markham dozing with Bruno under her arm and Joey making magic with his markers. With a sense of urgency, I swept through the hospital's corridors, and when I didn't find Aunt Queenie, I made the trip again. This time I checked more thoroughly, even glancing through the windows of some swinging doors marked maternity ward. That's where I spotted her, halfway down a long hallway, standing motionless, entranced. What was she looking at? Newborn babies? I moved close to the door. Yes. Tilted up in a display window were 3 bassinets holding 3 small bundles. 2 blue, 1 pink. I backed up and read the sign. Maternity ward, visiting hours 1 to 3 and 7 to 8:30 p.m., family members only. Incredible! Aunt Queenie had broken the rules. Slowly, dreamily, she reached out and touched one hand to the glass that separated her from the bundles. She stood that way for a long time, and I stood watching her, expecting any minute that an irate nurse would come charging out, commanding her to leave. No nurse came, so I opened one swinging door and slipped inside. The hallway was carpeted, and one of my sneakers squeaked on the aluminum strip that separated carpet from tile. Aunt Queenie turned at the sound. Her face brightened, and she motioned for me to come for a closer look at the babies. When I reached her side, the pink bundle squirmed, and the tiny, wrinkled girl started squealing. The sound, muffled by the glass, was that of a kitten mewling. Wish I could pick her up and cuddle her, said Aunt Queenie wistfully. I've always wanted a baby girl, but it wasn't meant to be. Sometimes my arms just feel so empty. I remembered her cuddling that brand new teddy bear. Had she pretended it was a real live baby? Aunt Queenie stood up straighter and retied the scarf in her hair. I'm being silly, Del Rita, because I have a child to love. You're not little anymore, but you very much need a mother, and that job fell to me. I know I can never take Shirley's place, but still, you're like a daughter to me. I keep hoping someday we'll be close, like a real mother and a daughter ought to be. I stopped breathing. Aunt Queenie wanted to be a mother to me? So far, I've had a hard time reaching you, she said, lifting my chin and staring into my eyes. Don't you know you've added a new dimension to my life, that you've made my home complete? Someday you'll fly off on your own, but for this little while I want to keep you under my wings. But I thought I was just a responsibility. Aunt Queenie's eyebrows shot upward. Of course you're a responsibility. That's what parenting is all about. Responsibility tempered with love. For a moment I stood there, unmoving, let it sink in that I wasn't just someone for Aunt Queenie to take good care of or die trying. I fingered the button in my pocket and let the memory of an army button flit across my mind. Leo had died trying to take care of Orvis Roebuck. The sergeant's voice rang in my ears. For Leo, the war ended back in that little village. I was helpless and dying, and he saved my life. I was the turtle he set off the post. In a flash of insight, I saw Aunt Queenie helping others, finding every turtle that needed rescuing and lifting them off the post. And I was the prime turtle. She'd helped me in many ways after my parents died, changing my room so it would feel more like home, insisting I carve out in the open so I couldn't hide in my shell, boxing up Dad's scrapbooks and Mom's doilies for the day when I could deal with them, talking Mrs. Markham into letting me take Joey places because she knew how much I missed Punky, helping me search for Joey's bear. Would I ever forget my prissy Aunt Queenie digging through the trash in her lavender pantsuit? No, no more than I could forget those boxes of keepsakes in the garage, stacked on the woodpile for a cold fireplace. Aunt Queenie, I thought, you're a walking paradox. The next thing I knew, she was a watery, wavering image, and I was sobbing and throwing my arms around her. Del Rita, I declare, she said, but the shakiness in her voice told me she was crying too. When she clutched me tightly against her breast, I felt absolutely giddy to be hugging the Queen. Del Rita, she murmured, stroking her hair, I've waited so long for you to stop holding back. Holding back. That was the plain, unvarnished truth, and hearing her say it made me tingle with shame. I'd kept her at a distance all this time because I'd wanted my parents, my home, my life the way it used to be. That's why I hadn't found a place to hang my heart. Aunt Queenie, I snuffled, Ladies, please! The sharp voice came from a stout nurse who must have had nails for lunch. This is a maternity ward, not a soap opera. She snapped. Have your sob session someplace else. Wiping away tears with her fingers, Aunt Queenie struck a regal pose and looked down her nose at the nurse. I know this is a maternity ward. I detest soap operas, and this is hardly a sob sesh. The woman grabbed us by the arms and hauled us toward the swinging doors. How dare you do this? Shrieked Aunt Queenie. Release the child. Just shy of the doors, the nurse let us go, but Aunt Queenie and I couldn't stop the momentum. We shot through like two battering rams. Heads swiveled in our direction, and then all motion stopped. At least half a dozen people were gaping at us, but Aunt Queenie's feathers were ruffled now. She stalked back to the nurse and spoke through the glass in a voice that would blister paint. Loosen up! You're worse than dad-blammed old maid schoolmarm with her underwear in a twist. I burst out laughing, but Aunt Queenie's face was set in stone. Come, Del Rita, she said, sailing gracefully past me and down the hall. I didn't move. I just kept laughing and staring at her dignified back until she turned a corner. She'd borrowed her father's expression just as he'd borrowed hers. Next thing you know, she'd be chewing tobacco and spitting in a can. The more I thought about the situation, the funnier it got. I visualized the nurse chomping nails, her underwear in a twist. Finally, holding my sides, fighting hysteria, I trailed after Aunt Queenie. When I rounded the corner, there she stood, arms crossed, waiting for me. I declare, Del Rita, can't you be a bit quieter? This is a hospital, you know. Yeah, I cackled, I know. I don't understand why you're laughing. That nurse? The way she looked at you like you were a royal pain? Aunt Queenie adjusted the pencil behind her ear. Then, eyes twinkling, she leaned toward me and confided, I can be. Queen Esther Holloway gets upset when someone lays a hand on you. We linked arms and walked together down the hallway. I barely noticed the white uniforms, the nasal voice in the intercom, the antiseptic smell. The sensation was that of open air, and I was flying free.